Nice to finally meet you in person.
Nice to meet you. Well, I hope I have something worthwhile to share with you. I have been out of this
Hmm,
environment for 20 years.
really?
I have been out of academics. I changed my career field. I raised three kids who are all vegan. They've been vegan since birth. Um, I haven't really, yeah, I haven't been a part of this world in a long time. Whoever is in the back there on the couch.
Oh, this is Keely, the good one, the good cat. The bad cat is currently taking a nap, thankfully.
I have a pair of those too. I'm Lisa Finlay. I currently live in Durham, North Carolina. I am a psychotherapist and the director of clinical services at a big therapeutic community. And back in the 80s, I was working for a humane society in Atlanta, Georgia, and was just um, exposed to all kinds of animal rights literature. And I became vegan at the time and uh, decided to try to make a career out of animal rights. And so I went to graduate school at NC State, where Tom Regan was a professor. And there wasn't really any area of study at that time. This was like 1989. Um, there wasn't any area of study that could prepare you for a job in animal rights. And so I created a master's in liberal studies that focused on different forms of oppression. So I took philosophy and literature and history around sexism, racism, speciesism, those kinds of things. And my uh, my final project was it was a paper talking about the intersections between these different forms of oppression. And that led to putting together a conference with Tom and Nancy Reagan and Gary Francione and his wife Anna Charlton. It was at Rutgers in 19, maybe 92, um, in the summer. And it was for students and college students. And it focused on these intersections. I'm pretty sure it was the first of its kind anywhere in the world. And we invited people who talked about uh, sexism, racism, and uh, bringing in animal issues. So we had Feminists for Animal Rights, as well as all kinds of other people talking about the intersections between these different forms of oppression.
Yeah, so what happened after that? It didn't, so you said you got started in doing animal rights professionally.
Yes, so I at that conference, I believe, shortly afterwards, I was offered a position with Feminists for Animal Rights. I'd become friends with Batya Bauman and had encountered Carol Adams and Marty Keel and a lot of the people on their board at different times, different conferences, and had worked together with them. And so I was hired on as a national director. And that it was a part-time job. Um, we had somebody on our board who actually helped pay my salary because uh, we were not a rich organization at that time. And mas- mainly what we did was put out a newsletter and go to colleges and universities and uh, provide our uh, slideshow that Marty Keel had developed.
Mhm. So you came into FAR, I guess, towards the end of FAR, and I was looking through the newsletters, and as this is all, slightly before me. I was born in the '80s, so I'm kind of playing catch up with a lot of it. But it seemed like as FAR was trying to become a stable national charity, and part of that was bringing you in. I think it just kind of fell from there. It didn't quite make the leap over. Is that correct to say?
So I came in probably about 1994,
Okay, so that
I'm
was much earlier.
guessing. Pardon me?
That's much earlier than I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and I would say that I think there are a lot of small things that went into what happened to be the end of FAR. Um, there was never a huge group of people who, um, supported us. We had we had regional chapters all around the country. And I think at our busiest time, this was in the mid 90s when at different places around the country, we set up safe houses for the animals of women who were victims of domestic violence. And that action created a lot of smaller groups around the country.
Okay.
They often depended, I think, on certain people to, generate excitement or interest. And for some reason or another, I don't really know how to explain it, but it never lasted
Mhm.
or it didn't last.
Yeah. Well, that tends to be the case with a lot of grassroots organizations. If you don't have a steady source of funding and you're always relying on volunteer labor, especially as women who are doing a lot of this unpaid work, that tends to be the story. So I was wondering then what we could lead into the next question and what you think some of the main difficulties or barriers have been for vegan feminism, and sees probably one of those is being the lack of movement-wide support, which seems like it might be changing a bit today versus say the '90s.
I um I will just take a smaller bite of that
Okay.
and go back to this idea of feminists for animal rights. I was always uncertain whether having a name like that would bring in supporters. And I think that people viewed an organization that focused on feminism for animal rights, believed that we didn't speak for enough of these ideas,
Mm.
that we were too hyper focused. And I think may have, hmm, it may have turned some people off.
Yeah.
Uh, our regional meetings were only open to women. And I know that there were, at least in this area, there were men at the time who wanted to participate, but could only do so from kind of outside. And I think just um, minimizing participation in that kind of way was a drawback for
Yeah.
people.
Was the women only policy throughout all of FAR?
Um, it's been a long time, so I don't want to say anything that's not true. I don't know. I mean, obviously, we would accept financial support from anybody. Anybody could come to uh, FAR events. but our meetings, as I remember, were closed to men.
Hmm. So it seems pretty consistent with when I was looking through the newsletters, but I know that it was a bit of a debate on whether or not to do that. And then there was some, like you said, there were exceptions made for social events and fundraising, but that it seems like FAR sort of closed its doors before we entered into a new wave of feminism where the idea of women only has become way more contentious, right? With non-binary transgender folks and all that.
Sure, of course. Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting though to see your perspective. It's like even before we started to deal with those issues, just closing it off to cisgendered men was perhaps reason for its limited reach.
I think so.
But that's also interesting though that you said it was hyper focused. So when you say hyper focused, do you mean on just feminism? Because it seems like that they're in becoming focused on feminism, it opened up a lot more dialogues and campaigns than perhaps the traditional animal rights folks were doing.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, all I mean is that if you read the newsletters, there is a certain focus.
Mm,
Um, and I think that was not appealing to everybody in the animal rights movement.
yeah.
And it certainly wasn't appealing to a lot of feminists because they didn't want to stop eating animals. I remember going to a feminist music festival, and there were lots of vendors there, and nobody came to the far tent. I mean, of course, a few people did, but it was not, I was shocked. I
Yeah.
was so surprised and disappointed that more feminists didn't care about these issues. And, you know, uh, people that you thought would be allies, people that I have always thought would be allies, environmentalists, people who consider themselves to be environmentalists, um, uh, don't feel like they need to care about these other issues.
Yeah. Do you think that that's changing at all? Because I'm thinking if you were to have a booth like that at a music thing today, a feminist one or anyone really, I feel like that young people might be a lot more interested
I
today.
think more people would be interested now.
Well, that has to be due to some of the efforts of FAR.
Hopefully.
I mean, activists have had to have some kind of influence for here we are, say 20, 30 years later, and
Sure,
that's
sure.
a more normal thing for
I,
to see.
yes, I believe I traveled all over the place doing the FAR slideshow at universities, even as far as Austria.
Wow.
Um, and that always brought up wonderful conversations and brought in people who were very interested in these ideas. Um, and I just don't know how much farther it went than having an academic interest
Mm,
for the majority of people.
mm. Are you tuned in at all with what's going on with the animal rights movement or the feminist movement for that matter today? And do you see any progress compared to what you were facing when you were with FAR?
One huge change has just been the access to vegan food. And so I have to believe that that is a result of activism in the past.
Mm,
Um, there all around the world, so many vegan restaurants, and I just got back from Spain, and frankly, it's easier to eat vegan there than it is in the United States.
mm,
Um, and it seemed like there were in one city, I think we were in Barcelona, there were vegan messages spray painted all over the place. Um, anyway, I forgot what your question was. I'm sorry.
No, you're on track. I was just wondering, like, now you have the hindsight, right? So you can look back and see. what has changed, and has the animal rights movement changed? Has the feminist movement changed? Culturally, you're seeing these changes. And I was just thinking, like, you're in North Carolina, and I'm from Virginia, and when I go back home to visit, and I'm from a tiny little itsy bitsy railroad mountain town, and I can go into a grocery store there and get their ice cream selection. There's more than I could even find here in England.
Oh, wow.
Ice cream. So, and I mean, obviously that's not, I mean, it's not an animal rights kind of population there, but it's an
Yeah,
aging and lower income population who care about their health and are trying to cut back on animal
right.
products for that reason. But nonetheless, when I go home, I'm like, I can get anything I want.
That's great. Yeah. Yes. Okay. I think that's true here as well. Of course it is. Um, I think from the outside, it seems to me that there is less presence of animal rights groups. There's less activism at this point. I mean, we were always out. I'm talking about the 80s and 90s. We were always out doing some action. You know, when the circus came to town, we were there with signs and costumes and, news releases. And you don't see that
No.
right now. And I don't know why that is. I think that there's more professional lobbying and things like that from the major groups like uh, what used to be HSUS. I can't remember what they just changed their name to, but um, other organizations that have a more national presence.
So yeah, it's definitely a major shift that I've seen in research for another book where I was looking at just the overall shape of the movement. So by the end of the 1990s, it had, yeah, indeed, it had professionalized where grassroots efforts really aren't, I guess, cool anymore, whatever you want to call them. It's very surprising here in England. I'm starting to see a resurgence of that. There's a direct action group that's here that comes out in the city twice a month and just shows videos. And
Is that the cube?
no, it's a knockoff of that. It's called WTF, We the Free, but
Okay.
I don't
Well,
know if they're in the States.
the cube is the only activist organization I see anywhere around here. And they are great. My kids have done work with them. Um, but not it's not frequent. It's not, um, something that you see all the time. And I think that in the 80s and 90s, we had a much more regular presence around the country.
Yeah. So I was reading this morning, just kind of randomly related to this, was a reflection written by Batya Bauman, and she mentions you in it, by the way, that it was given at Marty Keel's the conference in her honor after she had died 10, 15 years ago. And she was just reflecting on FAR. And I'm pretty sure I could say now Batya is now passed on. So I was looking through this hopefully to bring her voice into this project. And in her reflections of FAR, she basically says that, we just kind of stopped existing because perhaps we didn't need to exist anymore. Would you agree with that?
Hmm. I mean, I hope that's true.
Is it rose-colored glasses she was looking through?
I think so. Yeah, I'm surprised that she said that, but uh, I'm sure in some ways it's true, but I don't know.
Yeah, I've
I,
just found the quote. It says, it still exists as a resource of ideas about connections between animals, women, and natural world. Perhaps as an organization, we might say mission accomplished because our ideas have seeped into both the animal advocacy and the feminist movements, both of which have undergone changes over time. Some of the changes, I believe, have happened because of the existence of FAR.
I agree. I
Okay.
think especially within the animal rights movement, I think, and I think of American Humane Association who took on this um, idea of providing safe houses for the animals of women. They uh, wrote and talked about the connections between domestic violence towards women and violence towards animals. And I think, that came through far, um, at least in part.
Mm.
But I don't know how much we have entered the feminist movement.
That's hard to measure, isn't it?
It is, and I mean, the way I measure it is by looking at how many people are vegan. And while there are more, I would say there are more in the youth. But I have three kids all in their 20s, and I know what their friends eat. And if they're vegan, it's because my kids have had an influence on them. But I still, half my or more of my friends would consider themselves environmentalists, and some even have jobs in the environmental field. They're not vegan. And so I actually would argue with what Batya said.
Mm.
Um, maybe I definitely think we seeped into these other movements, but I don't know uh how much measurable influence we've
Yeah.
had or anybody has had.
Yeah. So this is, I guess, is slightly related to one of the questions I was going to ask anyway about barriers to animal liberation, but it also seems like it's quite timely. You mentioned earlier there's a sort of decline in activism, but now also we're dealing with, of course, a new political regime in the United States, and I can now report it's happening here in the UK as well. We're taking a turn towards Trump politics, and of course elsewhere in the world. Um, and a sort of chilling effect has happened on activism. But to what extent do you see these larger sort of political influences or economic influences maybe shaping the success of animal rights or veganism?
Well, I I can't say for certain, but I would what I would expect is that it would create more division. It would create people who were more opposed to the things that we support. So there would be more antagonism towards uh, the protection of animals and veganism and, not using animals for whatever. Um, just because there's more conflict about everything.
So it's an intersectional issue then that you've definitely raised here. It's the politics, also the environmental movement's sort of failure to pay attention. Even though like decades after you were working with FAR, climate change has only gotten worse. Like we have more and more evidence to support that this is a
Yeah.
connection. Veganism, it seems, has sort of stagnated and will certainly be stagnating, I imagine, under Trump. Especially he kind of creates this idea that eating animals is a nationalistic sort of country
Yeah.
country pride thing to do.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, I don't know. It's a bit dejecting on that front. I mean, I had someone who had posted on my vegan feminist page back in 2017, and she emailed me last night to ask that I take her picture down and make sure there's no way to identify her because she's afraid of being seen as an activist because of
Oh my
the
gosh.
like that's something that we've never had to, I mean, there's always
Yeah.
police resistance and be careful what you say. And then when you're in academia, be careful how you frame your research, but never to the point where like I had been interested in moving back to the States because the pay is better. But I don't think I could do it. I'm afraid I get arrested just for doing my daily work.
Yeah. I don't know that it has gotten to that point yet, but it certainly makes sense to wonder
Yeah.
if that's where we're going.
You'll see. Well, okay, let's maybe not towards the future so much, but let's think a little bit towards, well, in a way it's future. What do you think your legacy would be after all these heady years with FAR? And like I said at the beginning when I first started the conversation, it must be a weird thing that you've not been doing this for 20 years and yet you've had people reaching out to you to get your experiences and see what you think about this. Like, what do you think your legacy is going to be? And what do you feel about all this remembering of vegan feminism?
I am so happy that people are interested. I am so happy that people come and use the archives at NC State, uh, that they're studying this, that they want this information. I will do whatever I can to uh, assist in that way. And I don't know, I can't remember if I told you this or maybe if Caitlin told you this about the boxes of farm materials in my garage. Um, those need to go to a library somewhere.
Not going to go to the Tom Regan archive.
Well, Carol, so yes, some of them will. Carol suggested that that the majority of it go to Smith. Um,
That's where everybody else's stuff is, I think. Yeah,
yeah. Um, so I think there's duplicates of a lot. So there's a way that we can share.
good. Yes.
Yeah.
It's it's a bit frustrating for me. So when I did my dissertation research, I remember as I was living with my mom when I was finishing it, and I drove from Virginia down to the archives and just sat there for days.
Oh,
And I couldn't afford to take copies, so I had a little digital camera in the early days of digital cameras.
oh,
But it's like it's kind of wholesome to actually go and like physically hold the stuff that the people
right.
involved in the movement had done. But really frustratingly, a lot of the stuff for this book project is up at Smith College, and a lot of it's not digitized. And Marty Keel's stuff was, but like Batya has a whole box up there that I mean, I just don't have funding to access. So, but it would be really nice to have all of it in one place. But also, I'm glad someone's going to the Tom Regan archive as well because I want that feminist representation there for future researchers.
There is a guy from France who I met with last fall, who came to the States just to look at the Feminists for Animal Rights stuff.
Wow. Wonder what, do you know what they're up to? What are they doing?
I don't know. He was doing a thesis on something, and uh, I was in touch with him not long ago. He was finishing up, and he had another question, but I don't remember.
Well, that's exciting that people from elsewhere are coming to do that work as well.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, maybe this is just the beginning. We'll see what comes out of this.
maybe so.
So, my last big question for you. How would you define, or what does it mean to you? What, Lisa, is vegan feminism?
I think it is really the recognition that our care and concern for women and human beings has to be extended to all creatures that are able to feel and want to continue their own lives. I believe that um, our our cultural behaviors all come from the same source, and that is millennia of patriarchy. And that once we start looking at that and looking at how we fix our own relationships with other human beings, we have to look at how we relate to other beings and the world, the earth. And once we do that, we will see that we have to approach all humans, all beings, and the environment with the same care and concern.